Good afternoon, everybody, and you're very welcome to today's meeting of the Rotary Club of Kilkenny. We've got a number of guests with us today, including Anna O'Sullivan, who's the director of the Butler Gallery, and Connie Ovison, District Governor of Rotary Ireland. Both of you are very welcome, as the rest of our gathering. Today, we're joined by Blaise Smith, a Kilkenny-based artist, and also somebody who will be exhibiting in the Butler Gallery later this year, but more about that later. I'm going to hand over to Development Director of the Butler Gallery, Rebecca Reynolds, who is particularly familiar with Blaise's work, and Rebecca is going to conduct today's conversation. Over to you, Rebecca, and to Blaise.
Thanks, Ian. Hi, everybody. So for anyone who doesn't know, Blaise is one of Ireland's most renowned portrait artists, and also does a lot of still lives and landscapes. Wouldn't that be right, Blaise? I think, you know, focusing a lot of on agricultural scenes, which I have seen a lot of your work with regards to agricultural scenes and the still lives, and many beautiful portraits, including Bernard Farrell, the playwright. So I think you're going to give us a tell us about your practice, and also what's really quite interesting is I didn't know that you had such a diverse background with regards to TV and media and computer science and Trinity and all of that, which I think maybe people mightn't necessarily expect, really, given what a successful artist you are. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon, everybody. It's really nice to be invited to do this talk. I'm going to pin myself now, and I'm going to do sort of it's a little biography by way of explaining how I ended up, you know, here doing what is really an unusual job. So to begin, I'll just show you, these are the kind of paintings that I do. Figurative realist paintings, they'd be categorized. I paint them generally from life, with my own eyes, with the thing in front of me. And what I see is what you get. So I do landscapes, still lives like this one, and portraits like this one. This one is of Bernard Farrell, the playwright for the Abbey Theatre. Some of you may recognize Michael Hogan from Kilkenny. I did this about 12 or 13 years ago. I don't think Michael would mind if I told you that he used to set up tin soldiers for war games. So that is why there's all these you know, soldiers in the foreground. But also he is distantly related to somebody who was in the Scots Guards, I think it is. So that's the Scots Guards there on the table in front of him. So these are the kind of things that I get up to. So this here, for example, is a portrait of my parents. It was a prize winner in the National Gallery's Zurich Portrait Award a couple of years ago. And shows my parents at home, as I often see them just as I walk in, you know. And I mean, I would have seen this situation many days as I arrived in. They live in Dublin, you know, and this is their dining room. And just as I would come in the door, this is the moment before they turn around to look at me, you know. So I suppose how I imagine they are when I'm not there. But I suppose the little twist in it is that they're sitting at their laptops in their 80s, you know, which they are always sitting at their laptops in their 80s, you know. But of course also, you know, people remark to me how my mother's handbag is kept close by her feet, you know. So these are things that as a portrait painter you put in because they're there. Often you're making decisions about what goes in and what stays out. And you know, my mother was saying, oh, could I not have tidied up the kitchen and this kind of stuff, you know, before. But all these things are very true, you know. And there's also things going on there, which I'll discuss a bit later in the composition, but also simple things like the inside here in the room is really warm. All the colors are really hot, whereas as they go to the outside, it cools off.
Mm.
They're actually quite deliberate decisions to manipulate your emotional reaction to the painting.
Blaise,
Yeah.
question for you. Do your subjects have much input into the composition of the portrait?
It's funny you should ask that about this one. So normally I say to people it's a collaboration. So very much, I would have discussed with both Bernard Farrell here, the playwright, what was going on the table in front of him. He actually wrote a little mini play that I was going to transcribe onto the pad in front of him, But in the end, we just put Act 1, Scene 1. So there's a play within a play here. There's, this little set diorama. There's little tables and chairs set out there. There's him obviously thinking about what's going to happen in the play, Yeah. So we had many chats about what was going to happen there. But I'm saying it's funny you should ask this because, I always say it's to somebody who sits for a portrait with me that it's our painting. Like I'm there to make them have a really good image of themselves made for posterity in a sense. But my mother, I was telling somebody this in front of my mother about, the collaborative aspect of making portraits. And she said, "You never asked me." And I said, "You're right, actually. I didn't actually consult with you at all." Because I said, "That's my painting. I made that one for me. I didn't really ask them what they wanted to be seen like. It was how I saw them." So that one's a slightly different one.
Did they like it? Did they like that portrait?
I think they liked it was in the National Gallery because all their friends told them, I was seeing your painting in the National Gallery and it was in all the papers. I know, of course, they liked it and they have it now, but I think they
were happy. Yeah.
I think they're happy. I mean, I've never had somebody unhappy with the portrait that I've done, which is lucky. But it's partly because I'm painting it from life or I'm working with them, and they're seeing it as it proceeds. And so they're part of the process. It's not like I don't come along, take a photograph of them, go off for 6 months and then come back with this thing and they kind of go, "Oh, I wasn't expecting that." It's much more, we're building it together. So they've made it with me. They can't be unhappy. It's not really possible. So, I'd say I've done a lot of big commissions as well. I've been very fortunate to do, like this is a machine belonging to Cork County Council. I did 20 paintings for them in 1999. And then this is a painting of 8 scientists that I did for the Women on Walls project, which is being run by Accenture and Business to Arts. So that was a couple of years ago. I'll be talking more about that in a minute. So, I mean, people obviously also say to me often, like, would you not just take a photograph? Would that not be the same? And so then, I'm going to go back a bit then to try and rationalize why I make paintings at all. So I'm going to show you, like, there's a great definition of painting by Ambrose Bierce, the art of protecting a flat surface from the weather and exposing it to the critic, which is kind of true, So when I went to art college, the problem wasn't so much putting on the paint. I was a bit of a prodigy. I'd won the Texaco art competition. I could draw and so on. But you're suddenly in an art college where with contemporary art, they're talking about found objects. They're talking about, everything is good. So, anything can be art. If an artist signs something, technically, it makes it art. The artist is kind of saying, I have chosen this for contemplation. Think about it. And they can drag in, as you all have been, I'm sure, to contemporary art guys, they can drag in anything and make anything. So it's kind of all good. So it's very difficult to judge then, as a young person, 18, what was going to be a good subject? How would I choose? So I ended up, having been a good figurative painter, doing test pictures like this. So this is actually a painting, because conundrum was, you know, what's a good image? I had come into art college thinking a painting could change the world, you know, and then I'm left with this situation where, which painting? What's good? So, and the other problem was, of course, that it's tough going, art college. It's a boot camp for the brain, you know, and the ego in particular. It's very difficult because you're kind of told that everything is supposed to be original. And so I was also doing these paintings, too late to be really original, you know, which is what it felt like. You just felt like, how can I possibly, I mean, I remember I did a big painting, big figure painting. And sorry, this is my other one of that, the too late regional clock. It's the International Artists Clock, you know, which is for artists who are more successful than I am, because they're too late to be really original in all the major art centers there. So, you know, art college was tough going, and I did not last it. That's NCAD there, you know. So I was in and out of it a few times. I spent about 4 or 5 years there fighting with them, basically, you know, most of the time, because I had gone in thinking, you know, that a painting could change the world. And very rapidly, within a fortnight, you're given to understand that painting is not really very important, which is a severe problem for everybody who ends up particularly in fine art, because most of them, after all, came out of school as the person who was best at drawing in their class. And they would have built their personality, as I had, on, like, you know, they're sort of, I'm the person who draws. And within a couple of weeks, you're kind of going, that's not that important.
What do you mean? Do you mean the medium itself, or
just the drawing is kind of stupid? Do you know, like, you know, like that painting is kind of like stupid. You'd be stupid to be doing that, you know. Here's a photocopier, here's a camera, go to the video room, you know. It was very difficult, I have to say, for me, being quite intellectual and having read a few books, to back painting as a thing. And I suppose also I had gone into art college thinking that a painting could change the world. I would have read art books as a kid and watched TV, you know, BBC Two TV documentaries, and thought, well, if, you know, if I could paint something like Guernica, I'll you know, there'll be world peace, right? You know what I mean? Like, as you do when you're 18 or 19, you know. And this turned out to be not the case. But like anybody who gets involved in art, I wanted to change the culture or engage with the culture. And I decided that painting obviously wasn't it, and that television and making TV documentaries are, you know, basically, I thought to myself, well, you know, EastEnders is having a bigger impact on our culture than any amount of paintings, you know. More people, you know, 11 million people every day are watching EastEnders or Coronation Street and taking their cues about how to behave, and even their aesthetic cues from that. So therefore, I'll go and try and make that, or make films, or something like that. So I actually gave up painting for 8-9 years.
okay? So how long did you last at NCAD then?
So I went from when I was 17. I was very young, which was probably a mistake, because I got into terrific battles with tutors, you know. And you know, so I gave up for about 7 years, and 8 years it was, and I was working in TV, and then I got a job in computer science in Trinity College as a videographer, basically working in a very early multimedia firm in about 1993. So we were still making CD-ROMs, if anybody remembers those. You know, I mean, it's amazing to think that the very first YouTube video was uploaded in 2007. I was making videos like that, and we were looking at interfaces to deliver video in 1995. I'm cross at myself that we didn't, you know, go, you know what we should do? We should, you know, put up a thing and allow people to upload their own videos. You know? But I mean, there was people in an office next door to me who were in a company called Iona, you know. There was 3 of them, and they became, you know, nearly as big as Stripe in their day. I know I'm still friendly with a couple of them. You know, so this was all a very good experience for somebody who later ended up being a painter, because then you're kind of, you know a bit about business, you know. So Kilkenny. So I had an office, a multimedia office. I was working with a guy called Niall Sweeney, a designer, in the middle of Temple Bar, you know. And meanwhile, I had met my life partner Orla, and we and there's Kilkenny connection there. Her mother was Terry Kelly, who was involved with the Crafts Council and would have helped set up Grennan Mill and all that kind of stuff. And she had a house down here, and myself and Orla began looking for a house in Dublin. And you know, I was working computers and so on, and it became obvious to us that we would, because we both worked from home, we would get more space in Kilkenny. And we began looking down here, and we were very lucky. We actually bought Mick Mulcahy, the painter's house, but that we didn't really realize that. There's a whole story there. I won't go into it. It's funny, but anyway. So I ended up moving from an office in Temple Bar to a room in this house in the middle of the countryside, which was actually really good for me. You know. Because, you know, suddenly, you know, I was supposed to telework from the middle of the countryside, you know. Now, the broadband only arrived 2 years ago, but I expected it imminently back in 1996, you know. So that was the plan at the time. So a lot of my days were spent looking at, you know, progress bars like this on my screen as I was doing basically presentations and video editing and interface designs for various companies, and you know, on Post and all this kind of stuff. And you know, and then sometimes, you know, you get this, if I remember, and sometimes you'd get this, which is a really bad day. It means your Mac is dead. And in a funny way, when I found this icon to make this talk, I thought, this is kind of like a self-portrait of me at the time, a guy working on a screen in a dark room looking unhappy because you had to pull all the blinds down. You know, and meanwhile, outside, there was this. Mm-hmm. So when I would take walks in the evenings, I would see this, and it became kind of like, I can paint a bit. It'd be kind of rude not to paint this. And I remember being over in Mount Juliet one day, and somebody had some paintings on the wall with little price tags stuck beside them. And I was going, if I could sell, I can paint better than that, you know, already. I knew that, you know, and if I could sell one of those a month, I'll cover the mortgage at that kind of price. That'll work. So Orla was good enough to bankroll me. And I went out and bought a set of paints one day and started from scratch again, you know, and I won't show any of the early paintings, but they were not terrific. But very rapidly, like, I got commissions, like, well, I was really lucky, I suppose. I got a commission to paint those, you know, machines and stuff for Cork County Council for a year. Mm-hmm. Out of nowhere, really. I had a little show down in Limerick. I'd been painting for a couple of years at that stage. And then the following year, I got a commission from Kilkenny County Council for the Millennium Landscape. That was obviously 2000 at that stage. So this is one of the paintings from that. It belongs to Kilkenny County Council. But I would have sat there outside, that's in Muckalee there, in looking, you can see the sign for Cown in the foreground there. You know, I would have sat up on that embankment looking out over that for maybe 6 weeks over 2 years. Well, was it over 2 years? Yeah, I did. Yeah, it was March in both years, you know. So,
so how long then, sorry, Blaise, how long I mean, I know you spend a lot of time, obviously, outside painting now, don't you?
I do like it, yeah.
Yeah. So how long would you say, I mean, how many hours would it take to create a painting like that? Do you quantify it?
Yeah, I've actually got so much faster as well, so much more adept at shortcuts. And I think this painting probably took me, as I say, 20 days maybe. But I do it in 10 now, you know. Like,
Yeah.
because I know what I just know how to do things. Like when I'm still learning, you know, it's a good thing about painting. You're just getting better. I mean, my work has changed gradually. I don't think it's changed much, but I see it when I look at a painting like this. I do it differently now, you know, and it's like almost, that's like looking at another person's painting, done by some other person, you know. So I gradually, by being in Kilkenny, you know, I developed a rationale for why it was worth painting, and in particular painting, like you're saying, from direct observation, you know, because it is very different from, you know. So these are the reasons I have, you know, to get up in the morning. So the main one is it's based on this much more conceptual artist called Roman Opalka. I forget, was he Czechoslovakian or Hungarian? I don't know. But anyway, what he did was he began writing out all the numbers. He started at 1 and just kept going. I think, was it every day or every week he would produce one of these? And he would just basically write out all the numbers, you know, starting from 1 and just keep going. So it's a very Cézanne occupation, just thing. But in a way, I feel like that sometimes when I'm out painting with my own eyes. It's important that somebody, you know, that they don't use a camera, that they actually look, they actually check that everything is there. So he got to, what was it, 5,607,249, and then I'm afraid passed away. But, you know, I know it sounds really stupid, but it's a bit like the difference between, you know, flying to you know, France and walking there. You know, there's somebody has to check. And I know it sounds, you know, obviously anybody's good at maths here is going to laugh at me. As being an artist, I'm not good at maths. But you're going to laugh at me. But let's say he had been going through all these numbers and he just couldn't write down a particular number. Do you know what I mean? It just wasn't there. Because he's making like a direct observation of are all these, just checking, are all these numbers physically there? You know, I know that sounds impossible because it's a conceptual idea, but it would change maths a lot if one number was missing somewhere in this sequence. You know, ridiculous, I know, but kind of, I feel like that it's a thing about checking. This is a painting by a painter I greatly admire called Antonio Lopez Garcia. I had begun painting in the way they're described, where I would go out and sit there, you know, looking at a farmyard for a few weeks and painting it. And I was in Madrid, and I'm sitting in a cafe, and I see this poster of this painting actually, and I looked at it closely and went, "That's a painting." So I trundled straight down to the Reina Sofia, where there was a couple of his paintings, and discovered that he had been painting like this since the late 60s. You know, so he would have got up every morning. This is a thing I don't share with them, is the early morning starts, but he would get up every morning at 6 and go down to the Gran Via, set up his easel in the middle of the road and paint this every day for, I think this is 5 years, you know, and a lot of his paintings are these kind of like, you know, dates that go, you know, 1983 to 1991. And, you know, now he's not painting it all the time. He's about 10 of them on the go, but he's or more. But the point about it is that he's going back and making a first-hand observation of each thing, you know. So I like to think that I'm doing the same with this farmyard. So this was March and April for 3 years, coming up to 2004, you know. So it's like, obviously I don't go there if it's pissing rain. I have to go on a day when it's cloudy. So there would have been another painting for a sunny day. And if it's raining, I'm inside painting still lifes, as we're going to get to later, you know what I mean? So there's these things going on. And then if sometimes there's a portrait going on as well, you know. But basically, you know, this painting is 8 feet across, you know, and I would have unloaded out of my van, you know, and to the amusement, as you can imagine, of the people who lived nearby and whose farmyard it was, who see this bloke turning up with a studio easel on the side of the road looking at their farmyard. Now, it's funny enough, like I never go into the farmyards. I always stand back. I never pass that railing that's in the foreground there.
Mm-hmm.
All the time I was there, I don't think, yeah, no, I never did.
You've never had a farmer shaking a stick at you, telling you to get to get out of there.
I have. Not quite. What happens is they sometimes when I'm setting up an easel in a field or something, you know, I see a figure in the distance circling carefully, you know, kind of peering and looking from a distance, and then they suddenly go, "Oh, you're painting." I've heard it a couple of times. Oh, it's painting. Oh, you're painting. And they come over and they say, "Oh, I thought you were somebody surveying from, you know, some department or something." And, you know, that they're afraid I'm about to put a, you know, a road through their field or something, you know what I mean? And the easel looks like a surveying thing, you know, and you know, the other misunderstanding, of course, is that they'd come along and say, not necessarily with the painting like this, but they kind of go, we don't want painting. And I'm going, the painting isn't for you, honestly. You're not the target market, you know, because it's a bit like, you know, a bloke turning up and saying, you know, I'm going to take photographs of your property from the air. Will you buy the photograph? You know what I mean? And they think that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to, but I'm, you know, but anyway, after these initial chats, we generally get on terrifically, you know? So, I mean, the important thing as well about all these paintings is all these myriad little marks, you know, are decisions made by me, and it makes it different from a photograph, because when somebody looks at this painting, then all these little marks, you're evaluating as the viewer, you're kind of going, is that working? So I'm just show you now this little video next. The marks are all actually quite, they're just marks, do you know what I mean? And they add up to an image, you know, like this, you know. So all of those tiny little marks I just showed you in a little video there are they're not really, they don't make sense in, you know, like that, but they're designed for you to look at as the viewer, and you assemble it in your mind, you know, when you're looking at it, hopefully, and it falls into place. So there's a kind of an interactive thing going on there, you know. So this is a painting I did of Waterford for Waterford City Council in 2016, I think it was. You know, it's quite large. So I think that is the largest painting I've done, you know. But the other reason I'm painting like this is it's for posterity. So to paint this painting of Waterford is to, it was related to, they have a painting from 1733 and mine one is the 200 year, was it? No, anyway, it was to do a companion piece, if you like, to that one, so that hopefully in 300 years from now, people will look at this view of Waterford in the way that they're looking at the other view of Waterford that's in the Bishop's Palace down there. Mm-hmm. So this was the thing about, remember I said I wanted to get into television to reach more people. I'm now playing a much longer game. I'm interested in the fact that paintings last a really long time.
Yeah.
So this painting by Holbein was done in 1533 on wooden panels. And so we know that it works. Like, as I said, I worked in computers before, and we used to talk about a proven delivery platform, because a lot of the time our interfaces and our computers back in the 90s, they broke down all the time. You'd build something and it would just crash. Mm-hmm. So the point is that this first-hand account lasts an awful long time. So it's like it's a piece of information technology, and it's been working perfectly, this painting, for all of that time. You know, it's not just art, it's also, you know, what is the lute doing there, the astrolabe, all of this information, how are they dressed? The social history part of it is often overlooked when we're wandering around galleries, because there's a huge concentration on the work being art. So my ideal you know, audience is a social historian. I'll just show you here. This is a gesso panel that I'm making. So this is rabbit skin glue and whiting, which is exactly what Holbein has on his panel of the ambassadors there, you know. So these are actually the panels for the Waterford painting that I showed you a minute ago. So, you know, therefore I've done paintings like this. I got a commission to paint in a school. And so for me, like, imagine somebody being commissioned to paint a school in 1933, in the same time that Keating was commissioned to paint. Well, he wasn't actually. He decided to paint Ard-na-Crusha and the electrification scheme off his own bat, and eventually half sold them to the state, who weren't that interested. Meanwhile, I'm looking and I got a % for art to paint in a school. As we've seen with Zoom and everything, I wonder, is a scene like this, you know, or this one, actually going to, you know, in the same way that schools were totally different 100 years ago and very different 200 years ago, is this something that people will do in 100 years time or even 50 years time? So my paintings are kind of documentary paintings, really. And you know, I am really, I said, my ideal audience is a social historian in about 500 years time. That would be perfect if I knew. But in a way, remember I talked about kind of wanting to make TV because it was going to reach 10 million people. This painting will reach 10 million people, but it will do it over 500 years.
Sure.
Not on a Friday night in half an hour.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I'm completely convinced of that. Do you know what I mean? Like that's what gets me back to what gets me up in the morning.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the things I was wondering about, your, particularly, I suppose, your agricultural work with, you know, your sheds, all these magnificent sheds that you've painted, and the color palettes, and you know, you are keeping a record of these buildings that probably won't be with us, possibly in 50 or 100 years time.
And the school lose, very important.
Yeah.
For all of us. And here's like the machines that Cork County Council were using to build all their roads at the time. I haven't got a picture of them here actually, but I should. I painted the roads themselves, the machines, and then like this is these are the engineers actually. But of course everybody came in and went, oh, what do they do? They're the engineers. It was just, you know, anyway, typical. This is like for Kilkenny County Council, the Millennium Landscape thing, you know, but then I paint a lot of farmyards, but you know, I honestly think this kind of farming, you know, a slurry pit like this and this shed, they're going to be gone in definitely in 200 years, possibly even 50. So I feel it's very important for me to document that, you know, or, you know, for somebody to document that, you know. And so, and on top of that, there's, as I say, this first-hand observation. I mean, one of the great things about, say, you know, let's go back to Holbein's ambassadors, you know, he was in the room with them. This is the court of Henry VIII. This, you know, the dust that they were, the particulate dust that they were breathing out is in that paint. Do you know what I mean? They were all in the room. When you look at the Mona Lisa, it's not just a painting, it's also, it was definitely in the room with Leonardo da Vinci, you know, for a long time actually. But, you know, like, there's very few things that you can connect right back to 500 years ago so personally, you know, as a painting, you know, that also tells you so much about what they were actually looking at, or and even thinking about what they were looking at. So, you know, in the, you know, and I mean, then I suppose the other thing I should talk about is I've been lucky to, as a result of these other commissions, to end up being asked to, you know, document sort of social history by doing these women on walls things with Accenture, and they've just done one in DCU. I'll just show, this is me. This is an engineer called Beatrice Hicks. And this is just me painting it. So DCU and Accenture commissioned 5 paintings of women engineers, and it was kind of a follow-up to the scientists that I painted earlier, and another set of 5 paintings that they did for the College of Surgeons, and this one was me and 4 other artists did 5 paintings of women scientists, you know, in order to a small step in the right direction, you know, of redressing the balance of the amount of men depicted on our walls, you know, in institutions around the place, you know. Yeah. So that's my painting there. I'll send you all a link if you like. There's sort of a 15-minute film on the 5 paintings, you know, and a longer RT documentary actually as well on the Women on Walls project a few years ago, which is good program actually, even though I'm in it.
That was launched for International Women's Day this year, wasn't it?
Yes, and you know, I mean, it brings up the whole question of portraits in general, which is, I've been commissioned to paint the official portrait of Brian Cown, so I haven't managed to make any progress on it because the lockdown happened in the middle of it and we just got paused, you know. You know, I was very interested to see that in a slow news week while they were forming the cabinet, Micheál Martin had chosen to bring De Valera's portrait into his office alongside Michael Collins's portrait. You know, so their symbolism is important. This was written up in all the newspapers, you know, and we can see also with the controversy surrounding various statues celebrating people who maybe shouldn't be celebrated anymore, you know, what's going on there, you know, and there's a huge amount of potency, if you like around these official portraits, yeah, and you know, like I remember I saw some amazing sculptures of the Italian fascists in a museum in Rome next to the Forum, and they hadn't destroyed their fascist sculptures. They had obviously just put them away and mothballed them, because the artists, after all, were making them in good faith, or well, maybe not, but they're making them probably just to get paid, you know, like in a way I am, you know, like, it's true, but you know, it's really important, you know. I mean, basically, what I'm really saying is I don't think statues should be destroyed, you know, because they're of the wrong person. I think there was a solution in the Balkans somewhere where instead of demolishing all the Stalin, you know, statues, they put them all in a park on the outskirts of town, in rows and rows and rows of them, you know. So it keeps the art there, so you can still look at them in terms of the craft, you know, and also kind of doesn't hide the legacy, you know, of
sure. Yeah, I mean, that person existed. We may not like what they did, but yeah.
And also,
that's another debate, though.
It's another debate. Sorry, I'm digressing. I should just go back quickly to say, where am I? Yeah, here. So as meanwhile, while all of that was going on, I'd be painting still lives. Like, this is what used to happen in the kitchen. Not really allowed to do that anymore. But you know, so I would be painting still lives on dark days or alternate days, or you know, other days, and so I was surprised when Anna in the Butler asked me to you know, have a show there. I said, well, you decide what you want to show. And she said, let's do still lives, which I went, actually, that's good, you know. And it turns out there's about 90 of them, I think, since 1997, like 90 biggish ones, you know. And painting a still life is like a lab for all the other paintings, you know. There's you know, unlike standing out in the weather where if it rains you have to pack up and run for home, or a portrait where you know, you have to get their nose right, You have to, you know, an apple is not going to complain, and it's it allows you just to experiment with.
Do you have a particular technique, Blaise, when you're composing a still life?
Do I have a what?
A particular technique that you use, or?
Yeah, I have a lot. I have a lot of. Do we really want to? We mentioned discussing this yesterday. I'm looking at the time. It's 1:40. If I go into the composition thing, it's a lot. There's a lot going on there. I use like the golden mean and so on. These do not just land here on the canvas. There's quite a lot going on. I'll show you briefly something that has influenced me. Where is it here? So let's say we're looking at this Vermeer painting. This is the golden mean applied to this painting. So the golden mean is a division, what's called the divine proportion. I won't go into its mathematical thing, but this is basically the armature that Vermeer is working with. And Vermeer is really an abstract painter in sheep's clothing, because he suppresses all the diagonals in these paintings, and that's what makes them very serene. But you can see here the intersections, the important intersections that the golden mean is making in this painting. And then he has a 12:9 grid that's really doing the business in here, which provides all of these positions of things such as the curtain, the tiles, all this grid. And this is very deliberate. This, you know, he has changed. Like, that painting that's in the background is not actually that size. He owned that painting, but it was only 3 foot by 2 foot. So he enlarged it to serve his compositional purposes. This one is very beautiful. This is Davinci's Last Supper. So what he did was its format is 2:1. So basically 2 squares like that. And then, so this opening move, as I say, it's like a chess game. It just goes on and on. There's a square inside that. You see the way that handily aligns with the tapestries on either side wall, that particular square. And then when you put in the diagonals, that gives the position of the roof, the ceiling of the room. Then this further diagonal gives the positions of all the tapestries down the sides of the walls. Then these diagonals proceed to organize the groupings of the figures. As you can see, each one sits comfortably and aligns within those diagonals. Then when you take these intersections here and you build inner squares out of, you see how they align with the rear wall of the room and the inner wall of the inner windows of the back wall, plus that intersection there of that inner square, which is perfectly proportional, gives the position of the top of the table, and so on and so on. You know, so I would then like have adapted it to these kind of paintings, you know. So I'm you know, I do have a still life here. Just give me a second. Yeah, this one here. So that's a still life that I've done, but I would have put, you see, that's thirds there, those yellow lines. I don't know if you can see them. It's not very clear. They're not very thing. And then across the, across the back wall where the line is there, that's on the golden mean, that one. So all the paintings I do tend to be organized in that way. So this is, I would move the sheds around here ever so slightly just to line up with these positions of quarters and thirds. In Bernard Farrell's case, you know, golden mean and the armature, which is using thirds and quarters, they're all lining up. You see how like the edge of the pad is lining up on that diagonal. This is all very deliberate. You know, and then, you know, the positions of my parents on the golden mean, like the oldest trick in the book is to put somebody's eye line on the golden mean. You know, where's my eye line? Here, you know, and you know, and then like, so look, even look where I'm sitting here now, you see that railing that's behind me there? Like if I was doing a drawing this now, I'd have to put that railing somewhere useful, probably on the golden mean. Do you know what I mean? I would move the whole thing around until it fitted these positions. So, you know, all of that kind of thing is going on under the hood, you know.
That's very mathematical. I mean, you were saying earlier that artists aren't. I mean, I mean, I would think that's very mathematical.
Well, I like geometry. I remember doing my junior search by, you know, so I couldn't do the calculations, but I could do a really good diagram of the geometry, and I get the answer by measuring it, you know,
Yeah.
by literally drawing it out in a manual way. Yeah. I didn't do very well, of course, for you know, and that kind of thing. But you know, where am I here? Right. Oh yeah, sorry. So I'm just showing you a few still life. So I don't know. Some of these will certainly appear in. I think we have a tentative date of September for this show in the Butler now of still lives. So that'll be interesting to see them, for me, interesting to see them all gathered together going back to 1997.
Yeah, it'd be fantastic.
You know, so yeah. I'm really looking forward to it. So I will stop talking now. It's 1:45. Does anybody have any questions?
Blaise, hi, it's Declan here, Declan Murphy. And Declan. I just want to make a comment, because this is a very good moment to do it when Rebecca is here. And that is that your millennium painting of Kilkenny City in the year 2000, which you did from the top of the multi-story car park, yeah. It actually hangs high up on the wall in the planning office in Kilkenny County Council. And it's at a height where you can't see it, and it's actually in a position where part of the painting is obscured. If you walk into the planning office and you're at the counter looking for information on plans, but it would be wonderful if that could be firstly in part of the exhibition that you're having in the Butler Gallery, and secondly, if it could be moved out of the office that it's in County Hall, because it's just nobody even notices it there, which is a terrible shame. I've said it to them a few times. It should be moved, because and it's also there's a history to it, of course, because it was taken from the top of the multi-story car park, and that was a bit like the Central Bank in Dublin, if you remember, that it was built too high, and the entrance to it was in the wrong place, and there was a lot of controversy about it at the time. But it makes a wonderful picture, and
I have it up there in front of you now. I think people can see it.
Yeah.
You see, because I have this 500-year strategy, Declan, I'm not worried about where they have it now, as long as it's safe. There's another 9 paintings in the offices that are part of that collection, which are, you know, good. I mean, already, if you were looking at this closely, there's a lot has changed. Like, for example, you can see there that the parade is no longer a car park, you know?
Yes.
What kind of reaction did you get, Declan, when you asked them to move it?
Oh, they don't even know it's there, the people who work in the office, because it's very high up. It's quite a high ceiling. It's an old Georgian style building, of course, the County Hall. But God, Rebecca, if you could get in there and just persuade somebody to give it to you, or at least move it.
Let's give them 20 years. I'll wait till I'm 80. We'll haul it out then, because it's going to be more interesting then, because there'll be a lot more demolished and a lot more gone, a lot more, maybe we'll even have a couple of skyscrapers in Kilkenny by then. Who knows?
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like there's I'm glad they have it. You know what I mean? It's safe. You know, and admittedly, you know, it'd be good if people could see it, but then they'd be kind of able to get too near it as well. You know, whereas, you know, I say I'm happily convinced that, you know, this painting will be really interesting to people in 100 years, you know, and they won't value it so little then. You know what I mean?
I hope you're right. I mean, even within the last month, there have been 2 huge chestnut trees that were in the rose garden of the castle, and they were just cut down and removed almost without anybody noticing. And you know, it's just there's a dreadfully I don't know, careless and even destructive attitude
Yeah.
to some of these things.
Well,
Anyway.
Declan and I would know each other from Antarctica, but we won't get into that.
Right.
Long time
Great
ago.
talk, Blaise. Thank you.
Yeah. No, but I mean, I'd say like, that's why, you know, like for example, I'm really worried about, you know, red sheds. You know, they're becoming increasingly rare. You know,
Yeah.
and I discovered recently by talking to a few farmers that reps have an instruction that sheds are to be painted to blend in with the landscape. So they want them to be painted either dark green or grey. And I'm going like, but what bureaucrat came up with that, who probably doesn't have any visual training? Because one of the amazing things about red painted sheds is that it's the perfect complementary to the green that's all around them. So although they stand out more, it actually makes a beautiful virtue of a necessity, the red lead paint on the shed. So I love red sheds, you know, and I'm constantly, you know, hunting them down. And because I think they're like, you know, they're toast. That kind of shed is rapidly disappearing, you know. Graves of Waterford, you know, those sheds with that sign on them. So, but that's what I feel is my job, is what can I pin down for posterity and what's important to pin down for posterity and so on. You know, sorry, any other questions, please?
Blaise, could I just ask you what drew you to farm, let's say farmyards, and that if I understand that you're actually from Dublin, maybe I'm wrong in that perception.
You are.
And I'm a farmer's daughter actually, so I'm just interested.
Yeah, you're totally correct. I suppose it's a fascination with the other. As I say, I never, hardly ever crossed the threshold into the farmyard. Do you know what I mean? I'm very much always looking from the gate inward. And you know, I'm kind of fascinated by them. I'm fascinated by the textures and the, you know, the completely practical side of the way a shed is put together. You know, the concrete walls and the corrugated iron haphazardly put together or assembled or imperfectly painted or half painted and painted again and all this kind of stuff. So to me, it's very beautiful, you know. And of course, often when I'm painting those farm sheds, the farmers come up to me, or people on a walk in the evening or something, they come along and they say, would you not paint the view? Because behind me, like, is the sun going down over fields, rolling away into the distance, you know, and it's absolutely beautiful. I'm going like, but this is a view, you know. The view of the sheds is also a view, you know. And also, you might have noticed with the one earlier on, this one, where's it gone? You know, the shed frames up the countryside through it, you know. Where am I looking for? This one. Sorry, just let me get rid of this guy. You can see through the sheds is a beautiful landscape in here, you know. This is the painting, and it's the contrast of the business end of rural life, you know. I mean, because also nothing is natural anymore, you know what I mean? This is an entirely man-made landscape that we live in, you know. It's been massaged and changed for our benefit for centuries now, you know. But anyway, you know, so this obvious contrast between the beautiful distant hills and this thing, but you know, at the same time, you know, for me, the color affinity then between the beautiful distant hills and the concrete here, you know, is, and the green there, it's just, and I mean, I just love painting a wall like that. You know, I just love it. It's just great fun. I'm not so fond of painting corrugations. They're a nuisance, but just has to be done. You just got to get through it, you know. You know, so it's part of it, but you just get through it, you know.
Yeah.
So
and you were showing me a painting yesterday, Blaise, of a shed that you had done with the indentation from the cattle having rubbed up against it over all the years.
oh yeah. Let me just lay my hand on that.
Just showing the age, obviously, of the shed and its use and its function and how it integrates with its environment regardless.
Yeah, the easiest thing to do is to direct you all to my Instagram thing. It's a shed with a red door. The shed is still standing. I painted it 20 years ago. Where's it gone? Let me just get up here. Of course, I can't find it now. I mean, it's interesting looking back over 25 years of painting. There's a lot of work, but I'm not that productive really. At the same time, it seems I only make. Oh, there it is. There. This is not a great image. This is the unedited image of it. Hang on a second. Oh, there we go. So there's that painting there. You see, what I liked about this shed, it's in Bennett's Bridge, just on the way out there. They've now got the door painted green, and it was red at the time. And I think I was attracted to the farmyard that was directly behind me. But often what I find is if I do drawings, I'll turn 90 degrees with each drawing, and sometimes the one that's behind me or to 90 degrees is good. So I was looking at this going, this is good. I like these little sheds as well that are, have a door going to nowhere, like a kind of a TARDIS. But this one has a story in it in a way, because you can see at the corners, the cattle have kind of made the shed bend inwards at their waist height, and the dirt of the cattle as they scratch themselves off the shed. So again, that's all painted actually with a palette knife and stuff like that. It's not like my paintings look very detailed, but when you see them up close, I'm an impressionist really. I'm trying to, this kind of gives you an idea. So that's the painting, but then up close, it's just marks, that add up to a sense of vivid reality, hopefully.
We can't wait to see, can't wait to have your exhibition at Butler Gallery.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. All right, it'll be, just be very interesting to see them together after so long, and also the progression or lack thereof of the paintings over all those years, because anyway, so that's it from me. Last chance for a question if anybody has something I urgently need to know.
What I'd like to do, Blaise, is to circulate the link to those videos that you mentioned, the RTE documentary and anything else that people can get an idea of the work that you've produced over the years. And so when the time comes for the exhibition, they'll be better informed, first of all, but also I think develop a greater appreciation of what you have done in the past. I think, one of the things you mentioned there about artists can change the world. Well, maybe they can, or maybe they can't. I like to think that they reflect society as it is, but also can help to shape society as it might be. And for that reason, I think artists need to be both encouraged and supported, especially now when their opportunities for people viewing art are so restricted. I think there will be a great burgeoning of attendances at places like the Butler Gallery and other places of exhibition when we're allowed to. But in the meantime, I'd like to thank you for the time that you've put in to creating today's talk. I'd like to thank Rebecca especially for her perceptive and I think very pointed questions that enhanced what we heard from you. So thanks to both Rebecca and to Blaise for today. I'll be circulating the recording of this later and look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks' time when, instead of having our own talk, we'll be joining with another Rotary Club and having a talk by Dr. Tony Bates. And then on the 19th of April, we have a wonderful talker, or a wonderful speaker by the name of Anne O'Carroll from Cork, who will be giving a talk on Making a Will Won't Kill You. which is something I think that, especially as we near my age, something we need to be thinking about. So in the meantime, thanks to Rebecca, thanks to Blaise, and thanks to you all, and a very happy Easter to everybody. Goodbye now.
Thanks very much.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done, Blaise.
Okay, thanks now. Bye bye.